Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us for the webcast series, Audit Analytics for CPAs by CPAs. Our topic today is the successful implementation of data analytics. This webcast is worth 1 hour of NASBA CPE. In order to receive CPE credit, you must be logged in for the entire hour, answer all 3 survey questions, and complete the brief evaluation at the end of the webcast. We are recording this session. The session slides and recording should be sent out tomorrow. Qualifying attendees will receive their CPE certificates within a week. Our presenters today are Amy Manthe and Doug Oberman, both with Baker Tilly. Amy is a senior manager in the professional practice group at Baker Tilly. She has 18 years of auditing and consulting experience and 10 years of experience working with IDEA. She oversees the development of training and the use of IDEA throughout Baker Tilly. Doug has been using IDEA for the past 6 years. As a manager, he works to expand the use of IDEA within the firm and helps to develop training to highlight functionality and encourage innovation with IDEA throughout the firm as well. Before I turn the webcast over to our presenters, I want to remind you that if you have any questions, please type them in the questions tab. This should show up on the right-hand side of your screen. We will try to answer questions throughout the webcast, probably when we stop for the survey questions, and then we'll answer any questions also at the end. I am going to pass control to Amy at this point and Doug. And again, they will give us some insight into Baker Tilly as a firm and provide techniques and tips for successfully spreading the use of data analytics across the firm. And Amy, you should have control now.
All right. Are you able to see our slides?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Thank you, Lindsay. So I just wanted to give you a little kind of overview of the firm first, so you had an idea of what what we're dealing with as far as locations and number of people using IDEA and that sort of thing. So we're a national accounting and consulting firm. We currently have over 2,500 professionals. We're in 29 cities, over 12 states, so we are pretty far-reaching as far as the geographical location that we need to get out the word and the training and the usage of IDEA. So we've spent the last couple of years making sure that we can expand IDEA throughout the firm and make sure that all practices, all industries, as well as all locations have the same knowledge and same capabilities. My slide is not projecting. There we go. So the objectives, just real quickly, wanted to go through the objectives of this course and how we're going to accomplish these. So we wanted to help identify cost savings for the firms and how to include efficiencies in the audits and other types of engagements. We'll talk a little bit about some other ways that IDEA is being used. And then want to summarize at least 3 ways to increase the use of IDEA across multiple geographies. So as I mentioned, we're pretty widespread at this point, and we are using internal resource groups, firm-wide training, and a firm-wide collaboration site to achieve these goals. And then finally, we want to evaluate some of the specific tools and templates that we're using. And so we'll take a look at some of our templates and talk a little bit about continuation training. So the first one we want to talk about are the internal resource groups that we have set up. So we actually have two types of groups. We have our super user group and our thought leadership group. So I'll talk about each one of these individually for a couple minutes. The super user group is really more of the staff, the people that have their boots on the ground, if you will, that are using the software regularly. So these tend to be our experienced staff and seniors. And then we wanted to take a look across how many of these users are spread across the geography locations as well as our business units and our industries. So of course we first wanted to find the right pool of people that would make up our super user group. And that in and of itself can be a little bit tricky. We want to make sure that we have the right people with the right types of experiences. So on the list here is ask for volunteers first, and we really feel that is a critical part of it. We want to make sure that the people that we're inviting into this group are actually comfortable with technology and learning new software. If it's somebody that does not have a passion for this area, they tend to wind out pretty quickly. Doug, I think you had a couple comments related to that.
Yeah, and one of the things that I would like to add, and good afternoon everyone, is that a lot of times, these volunteers will tend to self-identify. This is obviously a subset of the type of audit work that we do, and it becomes very apparent who has a passion for using analytics or looking for ways to develop efficiencies and perform more effective audits. So you tend to find these people as they either attend some of our introductory trainings, as we'll talk about later, and show an interest. We will tend to say, hey, would you like to be part of the super user group? And as people ask questions to our super user group email, these tend to be the people that will volunteer to assist in answering questions. And these are the type of people that they self-identify, and you can use that group later on as you continue to develop trainings, as we'll see a little bit later on. But it's a great opportunity for staff and seniors to really get their feet wet in taking a leadership role across the firm as a whole, and not just in their individual audit teams.
Thanks, Doug. So one other thing or a couple other things that we take a look at. So first we want to identify the right people, but then, as I said, want to make sure that we have representatives across all of the geographies. Because most staff are comfortable going and asking questions to their neighbor or somebody that they know or somebody that they've worked with before, it was important to us that we have power users spread throughout the firm, so located in each of our offices. And then we also wanted to make sure that we had representatives in each of our business units or different industry areas. So we want to make sure that the audit area is covered, as well as we have several consulting teams using IDEA. And then on the audit side, or assurance, we also have several industry specialties. So we wanted to make sure that we had representatives in each of those industries. And that becomes more important with the templates and the development of industry-specific information, and we'll touch on that a little bit later. So this super user group really serves as an internal resource for answering questions, kind of how-to questions on a day-to-day basis. And then we tend to have fairly regular meetings with the super user group. The meetings are kind of organized around our traditional busy season. So within 6 months, maybe we'll have 3 or 4 meetings, and then they'll be spread out a little farther throughout the rest of the year. So we're keeping our meetings focused on what are our current issues, potentially suggestions for training. So we want to keep our super users involved in getting information out to the rest of our staff, and then sharing updates in the software. And then for the years that we attend the IDEA conference, we want to make sure that we're sharing information related to those sessions.
And to piggyback off that point too, it's nice when you have a diverse mix of individuals from different offices amongst different industry teams, is that they can start to help us identify any specific training. So, for instance, in our practice, we tend to be divided amongst industry groups. So where I may concentrate solely on insurance clients, there may be a need in our not-for-profit group for specific training on how they would specifically use IDEA to assist in their audits that I may never see while I'm working on insurance audit clients. So being able to have that type of insight across a variety of industries helps to identify where we can be a bit more specific in our trainings to deliver trainings that will be most effective to the users of our programs.
Great. So the other group that I mentioned is the thought leadership group, and this group has a different dynamic. So we wanted this group to be more of the manager, senior manager, and partner level, because this group is more focused on the thoughts behind how we want to use IDEA, best practices for getting that information into our audit files in a way that makes sense and is appropriate for maintaining integrity of the data that we are auditing and presenting. So we don't require any vast experience with actually using IDEA for this thought leadership group, because it is, again, more the ability to bridge the gap between understanding what our clients are doing and able to provide with how can we analyze that information in the audit to give us more effective and efficient support for the areas that we're auditing. These people, we again wanted to make sure that they're committed to progress and increasing audit efficiency and quality, and through using technology and tools that we have available. So continuing to help develop the trainings and the templates. So again, we wanted to make sure that we had a regional presence and representation through each of the industries. But this group is helping to develop the firm-wide methodology and the training goals. So again, this is the high-level training goals and not actually them into the material itself and presenting or preparing the training materials. But we need them to promote the use of IDEA internally. And so especially in year of big change, so whether this is new to the firm as a whole or we're taking another emphasis on expanding the usage for different reasons, then we need to make sure that we have the support of upper management, and regular communications coming from them really helps get the rest of the team on board much quicker. So we really do want to make sure that we're getting that communication out regularly and that we have their support throughout the whole audit process. So we're going to talk a little bit more about trainings, and I'll let Doug take that.
Thank you, Amy. So as we've talked about some of our internal groups that we have to assist various users with the use of IDEA, this is probably a bit of a step back, but in order for people to first use IDEA, we need to train them and give them the tools so that they can actually get into the software and be successful. So we like to start out with an introductory training that we offer really to everyone. This is targeting our audit new hires, any staff or seniors that have come into our firm that maybe have not used any data extraction software. And this is, we have noted here as a 1 to 2 day training to learn the basics. It tends to skew more on the 2-day side, where we really dig into the nuts and bolts and the of how to use the software, where everything is, clicking around and getting a lot of reps in importing data, going through, doing some basic analysis, but to be able to go through and import a print report, 5 times in a training session will make the use of that feature outside of training that much more utilized. If they forget how to do something, in training, they can obviously come back to their training materials and use that as a guide. So this is again offered to all of our audit new hires, and when we first started out, we utilized automation a bit more for our training, but as we've sort of grown as a firm, we were able to bring some of our training in-house and use real-life client examples that we've received from our super user group saying, hey, this is something that I encounter on quite a few of my clients. This would be great to incorporate in our introductory training, so we can take those examples that we might receive, that we sort of see out in the real life, if you will, and bring that into our training so that our staff are as best equipped as we can make them after our 2-day training session to go out and be successful. And this allows us then to incorporate our firm templates and tools that we'll look at in a little bit and understand what our audit methodology is and how IDEA can sort of integrate with that methodology as we look to design our audit procedures.
And a couple of areas that I think, reflect on often and are asked about is who should present the training and who should attend the training. So as Doug mentioned early on, when we first started with IDEA, we did use some assistance from automation in those trainings, and since then we have taken it in-house. So that's more of a comfort level within the firm when you feel like you're ready to do your own trainings, or if you want to utilize an external source. But who attends, as far as we're looking at it, we want all new hires to go through IDEA training at least once, and some of them we are recommending might sit in on it a second year. IDEA, as you know, has a lot of capability and a lot of functionality in it, and it's hard to pick it all up in one go-round, especially if you're not very experienced in the audit side of things either. So we are really trying to get all of our new hires to go through the training at least once.
Yeah, and to piggyback off that point, we try to make IDEA, a critical part of all of our audit engagements. So if we're going to treat this, as a tool that we're going to use in all of our audits, we need to have the training on par with, the rest of our audit software, so that it's a required use, so that people, as they come in to our firm, they know that the expectation is that, we're going to utilize IDEA as best we can in creating, efficient audit procedures. So after our introductory training, jumped ahead of myself a little quick here. I'm going to kick it back over to Lindsay for our first survey question.
Thank you, Doug. Our first survey question is, which best describes your current status for implementing data analytics? Don't have a data analytics program yet, just getting started, currently implementing, fully implemented and or expanding, or you might be unsure. Just a quick reminder, you need to respond to all three of the survey polling questions in order to receive CPE certificate, CPE credit. And while I let the last few of you go in and respond to the poll, we did receive a question, and the question was, how soon after starting at Baker Tilly do you offer the introductory training?
So that's a great question, and we tend to roll some of our, at least a very quick intro to IDEA training session into our new hire orientation. So that happens, shortly after each audit class starts, if you will. Our next audit class starts in the middle of October, and within that first week they will get some IDEA training. And then we tend to roll out our 2-day sessions then between when our new hires start and our traditional busy season, which would be the middle of January. So we tend to host quite a few IDEA training sessions from the middle of October to right before Christmas across different regions, just to make sure that everybody has the opportunity to attend one based on their client obligations.
Great, thank you. And y'all have control of the screen again.
All right, thank you, Lindsay. So like I was saying previously, after we have our introductory training, we want to make sure that we are able to continue to build on that training and take a look at additional features of the software and allow people, once they get that initial foundation built, what else can the software do and how can we better utilize IDEA in designing our audit procedures. So this our advanced training tends to be obviously either a year or two after our attendees take the introductory training, so they have a lot more experience in IDEA and allows us to sort of take a look at some of the more intermediate topics that we may have covered in our initial training, whether it's sample selection, the use of Smart Analyzer, as well as then some of our advanced topics. As you see on the screen, I will note a couple of them. Writing complex equations, much like in Excel, you can write, an equation that just uses, one formula, but these equations can get more and more complex, whether you're using, left, right, mid, and some of the, just to grab certain pieces of information depending on how the fields come in, and then flipping that information and then performing any sort of other calculation on it, as well as scripting, which we'll talk about a little bit later too as we get into it. But sort of the holy grail of IDEA, in my opinion, is, if we're going to use the software for repeatable tasks, being able to write a script that will allow us to perform those tasks while ensuring the quality and saving us time is really the end goal for anything that we're going to be using the software for multiple times. And then going through any non-cookie cutter uses, again, usually with the help of our super user group, identifying sort of oddball cases that we may want to go over and be like, here's an example of how somebody used IDEA in a creative way to work around an issue that they had with their client, just to get the wheels turning a little bit with our individuals on how, when they encounter a problem out in the field or with the data that they have, how can IDEA help them better understand their client and the information that they received. So again, this is obviously attended in a smaller number than our introductory session, which we obviously open up to everybody, but we tend to have much more lively discussion, I would say, in our advanced training. These are the people that tend to be very passionate about IDEA and utilizing data analysis and extraction. So it's a great opportunity for our attendees to interact with our trainers, and then also interact with other attendees and network and see, who are the like-minded individuals across the firm or across their industry teams that maybe they haven't necessarily worked with on one of their audit teams, but that they can rely on as a resource or somebody to kick ideas around with.
This advanced training is another good fishing spot to find those super users. So the people, not only the people that are attending the class, but those that are speaking up often, and I know this term is thrown around a lot, but thinking outside of the box. So thinking of additional non-cookie cutter ways to use the information that we already have from the clients. So this is another area where we help those interested individuals find the right path to the super user group.
Yeah, and that's really the path that Amy described is the path that I took. I went to in advanced training very early in my audit career, and had a passion for it and was willing to volunteer, and then the next year I ended up assisting with our introductory trainings, and after that I started doing trainings on my own, and then doing the advanced training, and as I kept volunteering for things, they kept sending things my way, and next thing you know, I'm on an IDEA webcast here. So as you can start to find individuals who are very interested in taking on an increased role in your firm, and it allows staff and seniors very early in their career to start to take a more firm-wide approach to some of the work that they're doing, which they may not necessarily get that early in their career otherwise. So it's a very unique path for people to head up, but it's exciting. So we have a couple of other slides here that I just wanted to briefly go through as we looked at sort of our advanced techniques, and I just wanted to highlight a couple items. Here we have some work that one of our audit teams did regarding inventory and pricing contracts, and as we look through here, obviously everything looks pretty clean, like your standard Excel file, but where this gets interesting is when we think about the data that we received in order to put together our pricing work paper. Our original file that had our inventory listing was actually a text file that came out of one of our client software that we were able to utilize IDEA to import, and the pricing information was actually a PDF that we had received from the client as well, that we were able to use Report Reader to read all of the information off the print report, bring it into IDEA, and we were able to take information from two disparate sources, use IDEA to bring it into a common source, and then use the data analysis features in order to join the information on a common field and then look for any differences in the price and investigate any variances. So that's one of the great things about IDEA, is that you can grab information from different systems or different departments, and they don't necessarily have to be both Excel files or the same type of file. That you can use IDEA as sort of that middle ground to bring that information together and use it to come up with any audit procedures that you'd like.
For this client, they were able to use this price testing in IDEA to actually recalculate this extended variance here, the price and the variance between all of the contracts, where previously they were sampling, and each year they had to send out confirmations to 65 to 100 different contracts. And this really added some efficiencies by them being able to join these two tables and then do a calculation on everything that was in there rather than just picking a sample of 65 to 100 different items.
Yeah, and that's a great point. When you think about the amount of work involved to pick a sample of 65 to 100 different items to send out confirmations, and obviously you need to wait to get those confirmations back, or you need to send second confirms, second requests in order to get those confirmations back. You need to obviously read through all the confirmations, see what the variances are, and then investigate those differences. Well, we were able to perform testing on 100% of the population immediately using IDEA, and then investigate all of the differences. So we were able to perform a better procedure in less time by utilizing IDEA instead of taking a more traditional approach, or what the client did or what we did to test the client in the previous year. And so our next example here is inventory reserves, and again, this is just another example of utilizing IDEA to bring in a file that maybe wasn't necessarily in Excel. That makes it, people tend to default to Excel if it's in there. That's kind of what we want to use. But to be able to get a report that maybe came out as a print report, read in all of the information, summarize, and then perform an analysis based on grabbing when the last date an item was issued or when the last purchase date was, and investigate our inventory reserves for any obsolescence. And again, much like our previous example, being able to test 100% of the population as opposed to making a sample selection. So your audit procedures become that much stronger when you're able to look at 100% as opposed to taking just a sample of it.
This is another one that we included because the data came from very different places and is not all quantitative. So this aging list is different, or they expect different turnover periods for essential parts versus non-essential parts. And while I don't understand all of the specifics of this exact client, they had a cutoff on what is considered an essential part. So basically the factory, this is a manufacturing company, would shut down if an essential part was not available. So they looked at this from a completely different perspective for inventory turnover and being able to segregate it into what are essential parts and not essential, and then evaluate them separately.
And then finally, in the employee benefit plan sector, being able to bring together and relate more than just two tables to look for any variances that you'd want to investigate. So for instance, in this example, we have a report from an actuary and then our headcount report from the prior year and the current year that we wanted to take a look at, and wanted to understand what the differences are between 2013 headcount, 2014 headcount, and then the actuarial report. So as an example, Robinhood was here last year and this year but doesn't show up on the actuary report, and James Bond is kind of vice versa, that they're on the actuary report but not an employee. So being able to take more than just two different tables and utilizing Visual Connector and showing what those relationships are, and then being able to investigate what the differences are very quickly and easily is something that we use quite a bit. And then being able to have an idea of the history as well of what we did, so that any reviewer that comes in can take a look and understand where we got, what the 3 different files that we received were called, what kind of procedures we performed in IDEA, and then seeing what the outcome was, so that either they understand, if, hey, we shouldn't have related on name, we should have used an employee number or anything like that. And it also serves then as a guide for future years. If we have some turnover on this audit team, they can come back the next year and look at the IDEA history of the procedures that we performed in the prior year to understand, okay, we received these 3 different tables from the client, we brought them in, here are the procedures that we used in IDEA, and then this is ultimately what the outcome was. So definitely a very powerful tool in the employee benefit plan realm too, for identifying any differences that we want to investigate.
And so this was kind of our 3rd example of improving efficiency. So because this is a frozen pension plan, they're not adding new members. This was also a quick and easy way to identify, if there were any discrepancies for new employees that were added that should not be. But then also this reduced the amount of testing we had to do, because rather than taking just a random sample and testing 30 employees every year, we can whittle this list down to the employees that we have tested in the past versus where we're seeing discrepancies between prior year testing and the current year reports. So again, we're just using some of these examples to highlight what we're using to increase the efficiency in the audit and how we're trying to piece together information from different systems. So beyond the advanced training, we also identify specifically training for managers, managers and above, so managers and partners. And really this training is conceptual versus mechanical. So we want to help them understand what IDEA is able to do and what the limitations are, and then how to start thinking about the information and our clients' data differently than we have in the past. So we need, in the management training, to get them to understand maybe a different perspective on IDEA rather than what we're showing to the new hire training sessions. We want the managers to be able to bridge the gap between thought and action. So the managers are more experienced with the industry and with their exact clients, and they know what information is available or should be available and how that correlates to other areas of the audit. So, if it's a not-for-profit, the number of members compared to the contribution revenue for the year. So there's different areas and different industries that are correlated or should be correlated that you can use IDEA to kind of bridge that gap again and make your testing more efficient. So the partners and managers, we want them to understand that this testing is possible, but not necessarily understand how many clicks it takes to get through that information. As far as possibilities and limitations, really the only limitation that we continue to remind our partners and managers about is PDFs that have been scanned versus printed to PDF, sorry. So we just need to continuously remind them that there is a difference between a piece of paper that's been scanned on a scanner and something that's been either printed to PDF or converted to PDF. But then we also want the management to continue to encourage staff and seniors to use IDEA on every job. So if we get the staff and seniors to utilize IDEA regularly, they become more comfortable with it much more quickly. And then we also need the managers to help with client management. So if you're just starting using IDEA or other similar software, the clients might question why we're asking for this information electronically when we never have in the past. And that's generally a good conversation for the managers and partners to have with the client rather than a staff level. So explaining why we need it, how we're going to use it, and how it's going to make the audit better or more efficient for them.
Yeah, and to piggyback off of that, as a more of a concrete example, we were able to secure the opportunity to work on multiple audits of a subsidiary for a parent company, and our partner, who had never used IDEA before, knew enough about the software and its capabilities to really ask, hey, is there any opportunity for us to utilize IDEA across all of our audits here? We're going to be getting pretty much the same information. It's obviously going to be different for each sub, but it's going to be coming from the same systems. Can we use IDEA to help increase efficiency across all of our audits? And while this partner may not have known exactly how it could be done, just knowing that we had this software and the capabilities that we should take the time to investigate if there's an opportunity for us to use the software to be more efficient was great. We spent a considerable amount of time on that first engagement looking for ways to, okay, if we get this information in this data in a certain way, and we get this other data in a similar fashion, we can bring them into IDEA and we can perform different data analysis, and we can also write a script using that information so that when the second, third, fourth, all the way down to the 10th audit that we do, where we're going to be getting the same information from the same systems, instead of having a staff bring those into Excel and manually go through and perform the same type of calculation 12 different times over, we could write the script once, get the information, let the script run so that we ensure that we're performing the procedures correctly without any sort of mechanical errors, and then we were able to invest our time on the more value-added analysis and investigation of any differences that came out of writing our script. So while the partner in this example had never used IDEA before in their life, just knowing about the software and its capabilities really gave us a great opportunity to utilize IDEA and be much more efficient even in year one, and we're able to still use a lot of those scripts as we move forward in years 2, 3, and 4 to be even more efficient moving forward. So it may have cost us a little time up front in the planning phase and as we went through initially, but we certainly saved that time and more later on.
Planning is a good comment that caught my ear there that we don't talk about probably enough, but planning for what you want to test and what your expected results are really helps the efficiency of using IDEA altogether. So if you are just kind of fishing around in the data to see what's there, that's one thing. But if you're trying to design an effective test, you really need to understand the data that you've been given, how it should correlate, and then what your expected results would look like, so that when you run a test, you don't get to the end and you're like, I don't even know what this means. You can compare the results that are being spit out to what your expectations were. So planning, while it's not specific to this slide, is pervasive throughout IDEA and all of our trainings. We need to make sure that we're training our staff, partners and managers, on planning the entire test out and discussing what the test should accomplish and what the results should look like before we run any information through IDEA.
Yeah, and it really gives you an opportunity to do much more exciting audit procedures, if you will. To send out 65 confirmations and wait for the responses and look at them from a very recent staff and senior is kind of boring, but to take the time and actually learn about the client and why things move in different directions, and how the information is developed, or where it comes from, or why revenue is what it is as you start to develop these analytics. That's really what auditing is all about. You really understand what the risks are to the client, how the client interacts with their, how the data that the client produces really interacts with their day-to-day business, and you start to ask better questions and learn about the client in a much better way instead of being so mechanical in the procedures that you perform. and it gives you a chance to really talk to people that maybe necessarily are outside of the accounting department too. You know, if you have an inventory question as you're going through and looking at 100% of the inventory, maybe you talk to somebody down on the floor, you know, a manager down in inventory, that gets you out of the accounting department and start talking to, you know, some other people where you get different answers that may lead to something else in the audit that you uncover as well.
So just a couple bullet points here related to other resources. So we've talked about a lot of the training that we do internally, but we also wanted to point out some of the kind of online and videos that are available already. So we do utilize the automation webinars. There's information in YouTube videos. Of course, nobody can verify how accurate some of those YouTube videos are, but you got to watch your sources on some of those. But then automation also provides some like how-tos and some white papers. And then we've added on to those and done some short instructional videos, really mechanical, really to the point of how do I do this. And then also some guidance as far as white papers and additional resources, templates that we want our teams to use. So just a quick little example, our videos, just took a screenshot of some of the how-to videos that we have available on our site, and we'll talk about our collaboration site in just a couple minutes here, but really just showing some of the very specific things that we have identified that we wanted to do our own training videos on. So whether they're either specific to our firm or just a question that we were getting frequently and wanted to parse out that little bit.
Yeah, and you know, quite a few of these from our BT How-To series were questions that we would receive through we had an email set up that would go out to all of our super user group if somebody had a question, and then, you know, one of us would respond. Well, you know, we kept getting this question that we would try to import a PDF and it would say it's password protected, but it's not really password protected. And, you know, for the first, before we put this video together, we get this question, you know, almost on a weekly basis. You know, obviously, like Amy had said earlier, we're across 29 cities and 12 states, so, you know, I can't just tell the people around me, hey, if you encounter this situation, here's what you should do. So we're able just to put a video together instead of, you know, tying up our super users or, you know, specific people, you know, 5, 6, you know, 10 minutes every time this question came up. We were able to put together a video, put it out on our portal, and anytime we got this question, we could just direct them here, saying, hey, you know, why don't you go ahead, watch this. This should take care of your problem. And if you have, you know, any additional questions, then maybe come back and talk to us. You know, and then obviously people proactively coming out here as they've gotten used to the software to be able to watch a couple of these and understand how to utilize the software. You know, we might be able to preemptively strike on some questions that we may get down the road as well.
So that looks like it brings us to the next survey question.
Yes, our next survey question is regarding training. What is the biggest obstacles you face? Time and resources, budget availability, management buy-in and support, getting through the learning curve, or other. This is our second polling question. Reminder, you have to answer all three in order to receive CPE credit. We did receive a question, so while y'all are responding to the poll, the question that we received was, in using IDEA on a 401k audit, what is the key used to link the two databases? I think y'all were talking about that before you got into the training.
Yeah, I think that was in one of our examples, and you know, we clearly cleaned up the data before we are presenting it here, but we did use, I believe, the employee ID was available in both of the systems that we were able to match based on that key.
Yeah, and you know, there's really an opportunity, depending on what type of information you have. You know, you may need to create your own unique field. Perhaps it's, you know, last name and then you know, the month and day of their birthday or something like that. So you get, you know, one field that will be unique to each individual, so that you can use that field as, you know, whatever you want to join your two databases together. So I know I've encountered instances where, you know, you can't necessarily just use, if there's no, you know, employee ID number that you can use, and you can't use Smith because there's 18 different Smiths that work there, and you can't use first name, last name, because there's 3 different John Smiths or whatever it is. Sometimes you need to be a bit more creative into creating your own unique identifier for each individual, which allows you to play around in the software, create a new field, bring information together in sort of like a concatenate type fashion that will allow you to have a unique field that you can use across whatever 2 data tables that you have. So hopefully that answers the question that was asked.
I think so. We did have a question about this how-to videos that you have created at Baker Tilly. Are those private videos or are they shared publicly?
Those are private videos, only available for our employees.
Yeah, so we house them on our intranet out, and we'll show our portal here in a little bit, but we created a nice little landing spot internally for our professionals to go to that is strictly idea related, that we can bring a variety of information to them in a single spot, so if they have a question they know where to look to first.
Great, thank you guys. I'm going to turn you have control of the screen again.
All right, just another couple small points on continuous training. So we've kind of talked about new hire training, the advanced training, partner and manager training, but the next step, the next level is how to keep IDEA alive going into the future. So as you introduce a new software or a new topic, it gets a lot of press in that first year or 2, and then as people become more comfortable with it, it's just typically not talked about as often. So we wanted to make sure that IDEA stays on the forefront of everybody's mind. And so we've just taken a couple different routes as far as how to keep IDEA moving, keep it alive, and introduce some new subjects or new topics or new ways to use IDEA. So, of course, a webinar is always a possibility. So we use that maybe for more official communications. The lunch and learns are just more brief and more pointed to a specific topic. So it might be something that's new in the new version of IDEA, or it's a question that comes up often on how do I join tables or how do I append tables. So we might do just an hour-long session. If you provide food, you get better turnout, but you can tell them to bring their own lunches if you want. And then, like we were just talking about, the short videos on, again, on the specifics on mechanical issues.
So, as we've alluded to at least a couple of times, we've put together a really collaboration site on our, utilizing SharePoint as an internal portal. So, super user group information, any internal instruction videos as we've previously discussed, as well as linking out to any external resources like the IDEA Help Desk, the automation website, and this is the place that we would house any templates that we have and any announcements that we want to make, as well as having an avenue for people to submit questions or provide any feedback. So we just have a quick shot of our portal. So a couple things that I'll highlight. Along the right-hand side, we have just information on the IDEA Help Desk that we have. So, one of the things that we learned as we went to some of the IDEA user conferences and some of the trainings is their 20-minute rule. So if it takes more than 20 minutes to utilize any IDEA function, then you should contact them for assistance. So just to reiterate that, so that we don't have any of our professionals spinning their wheels for hours on end trying to figure something out. So we have ways to contact the IDEA Help Desk for any questions, and then if there's any specific Baker Tilly questions, whether it relates to utilizing IDEA and maybe part of our templates or anything like that, obviously we have a link out for them to email our super user group.
And I really like the 20-minute rule. I don't use it just for IDEA. So as part of our assurance roles, we also take a look at our audit and assurance software, and I basically for our internal staff use the 20-minute rule across the board. So I've adopted that for other applications as well.
And then along the left-hand side here, we can include any training material. So anything that we have for what we call our Idea Fest trainings, importing and or analyzing, they can grab that information here along with our how-to videos, some information that we have related to journal entry testing and some best practices. So a lot of great information here, linking out across the top of the page here to some idea-specific items, the help desk, any tutorial videos that are on the idea site, and then webinars and on-demand videos, and then we link back to our assurance portal just to let everybody know that this really falls under the assurance area and that we need to make sure that we're aligning with our audit standards. So for them being able to sort of click back and forth very easily is important to us. So next is templates. And this really allows us to ensure that, again, as we're in 29 different cities across 12 states, that we want to make sure that we're performing audits similarly and to the same high standard across wherever we are. So whether that's among firm leadership on what should we document, what should we not, what doesn't necessarily need to be documented, what information should or should not be kept in our audit files. If any of you may have partners who want only the the bare minimum in the audit files, whatever can be documented that we've received and not included, so be it. Other people tend to be, if you used it, it should be in the audit file and we should include it. So guidance on what information should be kept as it relates to utilizing IDEA, as well as putting together any memos on, for instance, journal entry testing, what tests are ran, and items that will sort of give our audit teams a leg up and be a bit more efficient in knowing, hey, I can just use this template. It was already reviewed by our assurance national office to know that this is the documentation that we need, and if we end up getting inspected or anything like that, that our documentation will be up to snuff.
So we use the thought leadership group to help develop these kind of rules, if you want to call it that, the templates, as well as what we want to be kept and how it should be documented. So that's definitely a good area where to utilize the thought leadership group and the partner manager level, as far as what do we want our documentation to look like, what does the end result look like.
So a couple items that I'll just briefly highlight here. For instance, journal entry testing, we may have a memo that utilizes, hey, we utilized IDEA, here's how we brought the population in here, and then here's the steps that we perform to ensure that we have a complete population, allow teams to add any additional specific client information that we need, as well as documenting why we may perform certain tasks, whether it's looking for round numbers because those tend to have where management judgment is, or looking for entries that end in 999 because that may they may be making an entry that falls below a certain threshold that may require additional approval or a second set of eyes, whether it's looking by user to see if our client is, or somebody from our client is posting journal entries that probably shouldn't be posting journal entries, as well as perhaps looking for when journal entries are posted. So if we see somebody that comes in on a Sunday night right after the end of the year and post a bunch of entries, maybe those are something that we want to take a look at, because we know this person would never come in on the weekend, so it's odd. What are they doing that they're coming in to post entries at a time that no one else is there to maybe provide oversight? So those could prompt entries that we want to take a look at. So it just gives our audit teams some something to think about on different tests to perform, and already kind of has the documentation laid out for them. And then again, for substantive analytics, if we're using IDEA to perform any analysis to ensure we put together a template to help them consider what the risks are from a inherent and control risk, and what assertions we may want to take a look at, as well as how we're relying on the data. If we're going to use this as a main piece of audit evidence to ensure that we have our T's crossed and our I's dotted. So we will kick it back over to Lindsay for our third survey question.
Thank you. I have launched the last question. Again, you must respond to all three of them to get the CPE credit. The question is, how important is internal collaboration to your firm, organization? Very important, important, somewhat important, not important, or don't know. So please go ahead and respond to that. Real quick, Amy and Doug, we are getting right to about 3 o'clock. It's 2:56. So after the question, everyone responds to the poll, I'm not sure. I know you have a few more slides left. I want to let you know where we're at about time. So we can continue going through, but if an attendee needs to get off, they can and still receive the credit.
Great. Thank you for that reminder. And yes, we are close to the end here.
We will be brief.
All right. I'm going to go ahead and turn it back to you guys.
All right, so really it is just continuation and expansion, and some of these topics we've already discussed, but really it is a way to keep IDEA alive and moving forward. So some of our, from our experience, it does help to start small, maybe start with a pilot office or a pilot group, pilot industry, so that you can get a better feel for the types of questions and concerns that audit teams will have. And I am certainly not a licensing expert for IDEA and automation, but just recognize that there are different licensing options out there, so you don't have to go full steam ahead in year one. So I would just highly recommend, if you're considering it, have a conversation with them and discuss the best way to roll it out for your organization. We talked a lot about management buy-in and support. Using the super user group, consider using a collaboration site as that landing page for where people can always get an answer, even if it's 10 o'clock at night. And then plan for future training sessions and provide templates and resources, again, to make sure that people have the tools at hand when they need them. So kind of the continuation and expansion rolls really into our conclusion that we want to make sure that we have firm-wide support and continuous training and continually advance that training based on the technology and how we want to use it as a firm. So that really concludes the comments that I had. We can take another minute or two to answer questions if there are any in the Q&A. Otherwise, thank you everyone for joining us. And then included in the slide deck is the contact information for Doug or I if you had any questions you wanted to pass our way.
Thank you both. I know we took a few questions throughout the webcast. If you have any more, you can go ahead and type them in real quick. And I just want to go ahead and remind you, we did record the webcast. The recording and slides should be sent out tomorrow. We will get the CPE certificate sent out most likely next week. Again, if you have any questions, I'm not seeing any come across right now, so I think we got them all throughout the presentation. But if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to Amy or Doug directly. You may also email me at marketing@automation.com, and I can send your questions to the correct person. So again, thank you everybody for joining us, and thank you Amy and Doug for sharing your expertise and your knowledge with us. And
thank you for having us.
Thank you.
I hope you'll enjoy the hour and have a great afternoon.